Hey, so I just finished reading Angry Guy by L.J Shen, and it was really good. L.J Shen is amazing. So I've read a lot of L.J Shen books, so as soon as I saw Angry Guy was out, that she even had a book out, it was an immediate buy for me. I never hesitate on that. And so Lenora and Vaughn. It's not a spin-off per se, because when I checked it out, it said standalone, right? But it wasn't until like halfway in that I realized, oh, Vaughn is M and Vicious kid, which normally I'm not a big fan of spin-off series featuring the children. They go on forever, okay? And most of the time the authors put too much time on past characters. They just make them too big of a part of the book. This is supposed to be, if this is a spin-off series about a different character, then, you know, make it about them, okay? So, but L.J Shen did a good job of that. I wasn't annoyed at all, which is why I stuck it out, because most of the time I would have been like, oh, I don't want no parts of this. Well, this book to me is in two halves. The first half is in high school, and the second half is after high school. And when we get to the high school, Vaughn is not happy to see Lenora, you know, because she saw something he didn't want her to see. So he makes life difficult for her, as they do. You know, puts the stamp of disapproval on her, so to speak. You know, lets everybody know that Lenora is a no-go for him, since he's the most popular kid in the school. That's how these bully romances go. One of Vaughn's friends is Knight, right? And it took me a long time to figure out that Knight and Luna, you know, I had read their story already. One of my favorite quotes is when Knight calls Vaughn sour ass kid. I thought that was hilarious. And so Vaughn was concerned about Lenore telling anyone what she saw. So of course, you know, he threatens her, and she's like, I'm not going to say anything. But it starts a dynamic between them. And one of my favorite things that a hero can do is trash the heroine's looks, right? It's like they'll be calling her all kinds of basic, but then don't want anyone messing with her, right? At one point he told Lenora that he was like, no dick for you. I was like, wow, really? But I love that part. So in the beginning of the book, when Lenora sees something, we're not immediately told what she saw. And so I felt all kinds of anxiety wondering, what did she see? What did she see? But then when we get to the high school and you start to learn more about Vaughn, right? You learn that Vaughn gets a lot of blowjobs and that he likes his blowjobs very public. And you kind of start to pick up on, what that is, which I'm not going to spoil since I love L.J Shen so much. I'm not going to tell you what that is, but I feel like you can guess. Or maybe I just guess because I'm quite the reader. I've read a lot of books, so I can kind of predict where this is going. But yeah, so Vaughn likes public blowjobs. And at one point, he tells Lenora that she needs to learn. And so she calls his bluff, and they go meet up with Alice. Nobody important. Not really. She's not important. They go meet up with Alice, and in front of Alice's boyfriend, he's like, Vaughn is like, I've got time. He's like, I've got about 10 minutes for a blowjob. And Alice actually leaves her boyfriend to give Vaughn a blowjob. But then Lenora calls that bluff and says, you know what? I'll practice on Jason, Alice's boyfriend. And then they all go to the storage closet, but of course Vaughn can't go through with it because he don't want Lenora going through with it, which was amusing in itself. But brings us back to the end of high school, graduation day, right? Where Alice is accusing Vaughn of liking Lenora. And this part cracked me up. I don't know why it amused me so much, because Vaughn was actually very dismissive of Alice's accusation. He was dismissive, very disinterested, you know, denied, you know, Lenora was nothing to him. And then Lenora's over there blushing. So it's like, thanks, Lenora. You got no public, you have no poker face, okay? She gave it all away. And so for some reason, it's like, okay, if you don't like her, let me give you a blowjob right now in public, because that's Vaughn's thing. if we're gonna dig that deep to prove his manhood, which I feel like might be a spoiler, but it's alright. And so Vaughn does it. Like, I did not think he would do it. I'm not into the voyeuristic stuff, so I was suffering some mean secondhand embarrassment. But, you know, he let Alice give him some oral pleasure in the front of the school on graduation day. Which actually reminds me of Vicious. You know, Brandon and Amelia, M, who are his parents. And at one point, Vicious asks him, "Are you gay?" And that's when Vaughn realizes that people are starting to wonder why you receive so many blowjobs in public. Like 1 or 2 or 3, but you hear about the blowjobs, but you never hear about the sex. So, you know, he starts to get a little worried about that. But then to me, that's like the first half of the book. And then you got the after graduation part of the book, where they go back to Carlisle Castle for like an internship that Vaughn won over Lenore with his art. But he really won because he blackmailed her dad and, you know, the other people. You know, he blackmailed her dad to get in the other people. One of them being Harry. I don't want to say much more about Harry, but, you know, trash ass Harry. And when Baron asked Vaughn if he was gay, Vaughn responded, he was like, "I promise, if I liked dick, you'd be the first to hear all about it in unnecessary detail, just to make it awkward for both of us." And I laughed a lot at that one too. The second part of the book, while they're working on this internship, Lenora thinks that her dad is sleeping with Alice, and she has like a meltdown. And there was a moment where she's in the middle of her meltdown, where I don't know what she did, but it's like everyone else in the room took a step back, but Vaughn took a step forward. And I thought to myself, oh, that's love, you know? He took a step toward her when she was at her worst, and she was definitely at her worst. She was the definition of white girl wasted. But I will say what she thought was happening wasn't what was happening, which I kind of got the idea that maybe she had guessed wrong, you know. I mentioned Harry, and I don't want to go too deep into Harry, but let's just say Harry is shit. Harry is the worst. And at one point throughout the book, Vaughn wants vengeance against Harry. Like, he wants his revenge, but at some point he kind of changes his mind, and that's when Baron walks in. And I'm like, yeah, you can change your mind, but Baron fucking didn't, okay? Baron won't be changing his mind on what you did to his child. So, in the side of Baron that was hurt and angry about someone attacking his child. Because the Baron that we know is very cold. So to see him care that much, it was actually really nice. It was like, oh, Baron has feelings sometimes. Baron almost cried. It was nice to see, you know? And I was glad that Baron did it. I was glad that Baron did it. And I like the acknowledgement that this isn't only something that Vaughn has to live with. It's something that Baron and M have to live with too. You know? This thing happened and you couldn't protect Vaughn at all. You missed it. And that just has to be the worst thing for a parent. And Baron was such an asshole. And you know, it actually says a lot about Baron and Vaughn when Baron threatens Vaughn with a hug. When he immediately sees him, because Vaughn had been kind of avoiding him. At one point, Vaughn says to Baron that this happened. Not what happened, but he just gives him a hypothetical and tells him what he needs from Baron. And Baron agrees to let Vaughn handle it. But at some point while Vaughn was handling it, I guess Baron figured it out. And so he started calling him. And Vaughn was ignoring. And then when he finally pops up on Vaughn, instead of any like anger or anything, he was very quiet and he threatened him with a hug. I was like, oh, he's like, it's like I'm threatening you with the hug that you need. Oh shit. Oh, I forgot. Okay. Alright, so there's one scene in the book where Amelia is still mad. Not Amelia, my bad. Lenora is still mad about that public blowjob that Vaughn got from Alice in front of her. And I think she feels like he needs to experience what she experienced, right? So she has this friend named Pope, and she calls Pope, and she chains Vaughn to the bed, and Pope comes in the room, and she wants Vaughn to, she wants an apology and all that shit, and he gives that to her, sure. But when she wants to see his art, he didn't want her to see his art. And I think that's because of what it revealed about, you know, what happened to him. But when he said no, she let Pope go down on her in front of Vaughn. I was like, oh my God, that's what we're doing? Really? The secondhand embarrassment I felt, I was so uncomfortable. And then I was like, well, Pope really gonna do that for you? And this book never even insinuates or hints at Pope having those kind of feelings for Amelia. So I'm just like, wow, y'all are really just two platonic ass friends, but he's gonna go down on you and you're gonna enjoy it, and that's all it's going to be. That blew my mind. That blew my fucking mind. I'm not even gonna lie to you about that one. Afterwards, you know, the next day when Vaughn is no longer tied to the bed, he goes and threatens the shit out of Pope. And as he has his arm up against Pope's throat, he's like, I'm not an unreasonable person. Really? Really? You're not? You're not? You sure? But this book was so good. Like, it really made me want to go reread the other L.J Shen books. It really did. And I just might, you know. And of course, you know, they get their happily ever after Vaughn gets his revenge. You know, he takes some time away from her, and they get their happily ever after, you know, marriage, babies, the whole thing, which is nice. But I tend to enjoy the journey more than the destination when it comes to these things anyway. So that was L.J Shen, Angry God. Well, Angry God by L.J Shen, and everyone should read it. Have at it. It's a good time. In the words of Jeremy, it's a good time. No alcohol required. Afterwards, you know, the next day when Vaughn is no longer tied to the bed, he goes and threatens the shit out of Pope. And as he has his arm up against Pope's throat, he's like, I'm not an unreasonable person. Really? Really? You're not? You're not? You sure? But this book was so good. Like, it really made me want to go reread the other L.J Shen books. It really did. And I just might, you know. And of course, you know, they get their happily ever after Vaughn gets his revenge. You know, he takes some time away from her, and they get their happily ever after, you know, marriage, babies, the whole thing, which is nice. But I tend to enjoy the journey more than the destination when it comes to these things anyway. So that was L.J Shen, Angry God. Well, Angry God by L.J Shen, and everyone should read it. Have at it. It's a good time. In the words of Jeremy, it's a good time. No alcohol required.